This gang were wearing high-vis jackets. They were smart-looking workmen. They were digging up roads and pavements and would pass nothing more than a familiar everyday irritation. But in reality, this gang were in fact part of an astonishing covert criminal network fueling drug profits worth millions. Operating under the cover of a legitimate company, its workers would use barriers to illegally cordon off areas, dig up pavements, and splice into cables to provide direct feed into farms run by Albanian gangs. Their audacious daylight robbery enabled electricity worth millions of pounds to be abstracted into producing at least £21 million worth of drugs, investigators said. As well as being criminal, their actions, which covered 32 different police force areas across the UK, were also highly dangerous. On a mobile phone belonging to Elevate Civils and Utilities Director Andrew Roberts, police found a shocking image of him with his face purple and singed, apparently caused by one of the cables they cut into blowing up. Meanwhile, footage seemingly filmed by a concerned householder showed small explosions as the gang dug into electricity lines on a street in Middlesbrough. As Roberts and his co-conspirators were jailed today, a judge slammed their greed and said they had operated their cynical deception in broad daylight and in plain sight. 8 men were jailed for their roles after an unprecedented police investigation which revealed they had operated in 32 different police force areas across the UK between 2020 and 2024. Premises turned into illegal drug factories included a former hotel, shops, a nightclub, a pub, and an empty department store. The group was headed by Roberts, who was from Wigan, and a fellow company director, Ross McGinn, from Huyton. Both men had LinkedIn profiles in which they posted photos of apparent legitimate work to promote the company. In 2023, McGinn posted, "If we can help you with any civil work from fibre to utilities in the northwest, we have lads ready with full digging kits, etc., all creditations." In another post, he wrote that he had been a busy week of call-outs for the Elevate team digging out and locating faults. Deputy Chief Inspector Zoe Russo from the Northwest Regional Organised Crime Unit said the reality was that the men ran a highly sophisticated but dangerous operation. She said most people, members of the public, would just think that they're ordinary company carrying out the work, but actually they weren't. They had no permits, they had no licence, they had no legitimate reason to be there, and in fact, they were there to abstract the electricity. She said the explosions caused by their illegal actions highlights the real dangers they pose both to themselves and the public. Police seized the cannabis plants with a street value of up to £21 million from more than 100 illegal farms.
Okay, we've got a warrant to search the premises. Right. What's your name?
Ross again. Oh, no.
You're going to be under arrest.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's 6:02. Currently under arrest for conspiracy to produce Class B drugs and conspiracy to abstract electricity. Okay, so you do not have to say anything that may harm your defence. You do not mention when you question something that you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Okay, do you understand that?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have a reply to that?
No. It is a considerable amount, isn't it?
Most were occupied by Albanian nationals acting as gardeners who said they had been trafficked to the UK. The gang used specialist equipment stolen to order by Colin White from Liverpool, who was working for Scottish Power at the time. The group's activities came to light when police in North Wales found a £1.2 million worth of cannabis plants in an abandoned shop on Bangor High Street. A utility company confirmed the power source in the building, which had extensive modifications to cable and wiring, had been illegally abstracted from the high street. CCTV footage reviewed as part of their investigation showed 5 men who arrived in a van bearing company name Elevate, appearing to carry out utility work. The investigation found they were involved in incidents across England, Scotland and Wales. At a search of the companies based in Wigan, officers found diggers, breakers, generators, vans, motorbikes and cabling. Officers believe the gang charged criminals a fixed rate for their services, with McGinn and Roberts responsible for liaising with the crime groups, taking a significant portion of that. Police footage from a search of McGinn's home showed large amounts of cash being discovered. The 2 men pleaded guilty to encouraging and assisting an offence, believing it will be committed, conspiracy to abstract electricity and conspiracy to steal. Sentencing them At Liverpool Crown Court, Judge David Potter said all the defendants were driven by greed. He said their work was pivotal in setting up farms. He added they did so in broad daylight and in plain sight, and they used cover off vehicles, signage, barriers, and high visibility clothing to appear as though they were carrying out legitimate street works. McGinn wiped away tears as he was jailed for 5 years and 4 months. Roberts was sentenced to 6 years. So Roberts pleaded guilty to encouraging and assisting an offence and conspiracy to abstract. That's Graham Roberts. He was jailed for 5 years and 3 months. Then you had the grounds workers, Greg Black, who's 29, Lewin Charles, who's 22, and Aidan Doran, who's 28, all pleaded guilty to encouraging and assisting an offence and conspiracy to abstract electricity. Black was jailed for 3 years and 9 months, Charles for 2 years and 8 months, and Doran was sentenced to 3 years. Another person, Sherry, was given 22 months sentence, suspended for 18 months in order to carry out 100 hours of unpaid work. White, who stole the equipment, was jailed for 2.5 years after pleading guilty to conspiracy to steal and encouraging or arresting the abstraction of electricity. Absolute madness, guys. And in this next story, a man who murdered another man in Stonehouse in 2022 has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 20 years. Anthony Gardner has admitted the murder of 76-year-old John Coxon following an investigation by the Major Crime Investigation Team. During a hearing at Bristol Crown Court, it was heard that Gardner attacked Mr. Coxon in his home, which resulted in him being hospitalised with a head injury. So Gardner was arrested after Mr. Coxon died, and he was rearrested on suspicion of his murder and charged after medical reports confirmed his cause of death. The relationship between the defendant and the victim was explained during the court hearing, so it said that Mr. Coxon was a registered pedo and that this was known in the local community and by Gardner. Mr. Coxon had breached his harm prevention order. When he was speaking to a girl who passed by his home, he was not allowed to speak to any girls, and Gardner knew this as she was a relative of his, and this made him go angry. And the court heard that there was no evidence of the conversation being of an ill nature, but that he had breached a restriction that he had in, which was the unsupervised contact with that child. And the court heard that Gardner, who had a long history of violence and criminality, exploited Mr. Coxon for financial gain. He said he wanted a reward for finding Mr. Coxon's displaced wallet and took him to Coventry Building Society and asked for £400. However, staff alerted police and Mr. Coxon was taken home. Mr. Coxon required health workers to visit his home twice a day as he lived with Alzheimer's and had a severe diabetes. However, he was found by one of his carers on the kitchen floor on the 12th of January 2022. He was taken to hospital with facial injuries, and they recognised he had a bleed on the brain from traumatic injuries, and this led to infections and caused his death, which was kidney failure. So Gardner was arrested before Mr. Coxon died after he had told others he had gone to his home and stamped on his head. He battered him bad. He's been jailed for life. There's a couple of stories coming out the streets of the UK. It's your boy GT. Keep it locked, keep it real.